2.5 million people from 186 countries have tuned into our coverage of COP13, COP14, COP15, and in 2010 already, you've been able to watch no less than 3 major climate meetings from your laptop. Now, bigger, bolder, better, and with a prettier presenter than ever before, we bring you Cancun Live!
You're telling me that I'm live, Jamie? He's telling me I'm live. Excellent. Hello, welcome back to OneClimate's coverage of COP16. We're going to keep our fingers crossed that we'll manage more than 30 seconds before the entirety of the UN's internet disappears this time. I should start again by welcoming Zaina, who is presenting with us for the first time. So,
2 welcomes in one day.
Two welcomes in one day.
That's amazing, isn't
Extra
it?
Welcome. And we're going to try and run through the next hour and a half, internet willing, give you a little bit of an idea of what's going on here in the conference. So, Zaina, do you want to?
In case you didn't catch it the first time, we were saying how wonderful it is being here, and I'm very happy to be here. We have 2 teams here this year. We'll explain more about the layout of COP16 in a bit, but we hit the ground running from Monday, and we've been running around with our cameras trying to get the most captivating coverage of COP16 to show all of you who couldn't make it here in person. Before we get into all the details of what's been going on here, we've prepared a little video to explain to you how everything is laid out in Cancun.
The music, Mexican! Yeah, in about 20 minutes, yeah? Okay, perfect now.
If the talks go anywhere as fast as the driving, we will probably be fine. Each day starts with the bus ride to the Cancun Messe. Here, all civil societies are gathered, and the One World booth is one of them.
Thinking maybe about here.
This is the CAF where we get our coffees and brownies. Another bus ride takes us to the Moon Palace, where the plenaries are held and the working group meetings. Being quite adventurous, I went totally off the map and found my way to the climate camp. This is an unofficial venue, open to the public, where the activists are based. A taxi ride home probably brings us closest to the real Cancun.
The music, Mexican! Yeah, in about 20 minutes, yeah? Okay, perfect now.
If the talks go anywhere as fast as the driving, we will probably be fine. Each day.
Well, 2 welcomes seems a bit more appropriate after we've seen that taxi journey. You survived it, though.
It was really exciting. Joanne and Sarah were with me as well. We had lots of fun.
Well, in stark contrast to Zaina's taxi journey there, the talks seem to have got off to a fairly steady start. There's been no giant leaps forward. We could keep our fingers crossed, but we're not expecting that. But equally, nothing totally horrendous so far. We'll bring you a full news update in about 10-15 minutes, but in the meanwhile, we built an astonishingly high budget barometer to gauge people's optimism.
It was amazing watching you build it, actually.
Thank you.
I didn't know you could do something so high tech so quickly.
Yeah, all of my artistic and craft skills funneled into 5 minutes with cardboard. So we'll bring you that video now and gauge a little bit the feeling of optimism in this centre.
Okay.
You're happy? You're optimistic?
Yes.
That's nice. I think I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. Agree.
Somewhere there.
Well, I mean, from a movement, from the point of view of all of us that are trying to get something done, I would probably put it about there. From the point of view of what I think we're going to get movement-wise from the parties and the decisions, the COP16, I would put it there.
I want this. We're just in the beginning, you know, thinking positive. That's the way forward.
Well, like, I'm going to go this way, but it's not because I think that we're going to get this legally binding deal. I just think there'll be little incremental steps that will help us shift in the right direction. But I'm happy and optimistic for that.
I'd love to say we're over here, but I think I'm more realistic, and I'll go for somewhere about here, because I think that if we don't go into the process with high level of optimism and energy, then we're almost certainly going to be back down here. And we maybe just need to revisit what our expectations are. We're not saying that from Cancun we'll achieve the fair and binding deal, but it's likely that we'll make real progress on areas such as funding for adaptation and a new climate fund. So yeah, I think I'll maybe about here.
Okay, and what is this? This is neutral?
Yes, neutral.
Let it be here. Aiming towards optimistic, but not 100% optimistic.
You know, I want to be positive, but I'm thinking maybe about here is what I'm thinking.
Okay.
You're happy? You're optimistic?
Yes.
That's nice. I think I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah, agree.
Somewhere there.
Well, I mean, from a
So there was quite a range there of optimism versus extreme pessimism. Do you think that has to do with the experience at Copenhagen?
Yeah, I think well, there's different ways of reading Copenhagen. It was the OneClimate team was there, as you know, maybe you were watching, and it was really mind-blowing. You know, you had more than 100 leaders from around the world coming together for the first time. There'd never been a conference like this, and these leaders were coming together for an environmental issue. So this is really like a path-breaking kind of experience, and a lot of hope and a lot of opportunity.
Were there lots of people? Did you really feel like how busy it was all the time?
It was absolutely insane. There were, I think, 50,000 people trying to get into the centre, and the queues.
Well, it feels quite calmer here than in comparison.
Yeah, the tone is very different here. There's not the same sense of expectation, I think, and that is partly because in Copenhagen, although we had this huge kind of upswell in hope and people coming together, and it wasn't just in the centre. I think you had 100,000 people protesting outside on climate change, which is just astonishing, really. And yet, as many people will know that who are watching this, it didn't meet expectations. We didn't get a fair, ambitious and binding treaty that we were hoping for.
Well, when you and I were wandering around the hall the other day, and we were wondering, why do people keep coming and show so much initiative, even though the talks sometimes fall short of our expectations. So when Jamie's ready,
our tech man's just being commandeered for somebody.
We'll see what everyone had to say.
Okay, thanks very much.
and not take it quite so easy.
More than ever, we need international climate action. So this is another reason why people should be taking action and really putting political pressure on world leaders to act. That's why we're here.
Because it's not so much about what's happening in the talks, there's also a lot happening outside where people get to share ideas and inspire each other and engage with what's happening.
Okay, so we're back. A little short take on why people keep coming back to the UN. And as we say, progress is often slow at these talks. But I'm going to try and give you a sense now of the news so far here in Cancun. Following a very public bust-up in Tianjin in China at the last talks that we covered, it seems that the US and China appear to be making public overtures, a bit of an effort to emphasise that they're coming closer together. And when we spoke to Christiana Figueres, the Executive Secretary of the UN FCCC, which is the acronym given to these climate talks, she said that she thought they actually were working together quite well despite the kind of public spats. So maybe that's a good omen for the signs for the days to come if China and the US are getting along better. The talks here, as we've said, opened without too many surprises. There was no big leap forward, but no disasters either. And there was one country that has been kind of signalled out for a little bit of criticism, and that's Japan. And Zaina and I sat in on one of the campaigners' meetings this morning, and they explained that Japan has said that I should explain first, Japan is a party to something called the Kyoto Protocol, which means that it's committed to making modest emissions cuts by 2012. But it's come out now and it said...
Which is when the Kyoto Protocol...
Yeah, the first commitment period ends, yep. So Japan's come out and it said, actually it's not going to commit to emissions cuts beyond this, and so it's come in for a lot of criticism. And it says unless China and the United States say that they're going to do these emissions cuts, then we're not going to do them. Now this actually surprised a lot of people. I think it surprised campaigners here, but it also surprised some of Japan's allies. If you follow our coverage, you know we work closely with the Adopt a Negotiator guys here. There's a group of young people from around the world who work with their negotiators and track their negotiators to keep them accountable at their talks. And a lot of them are reporting that actually the delegations are surprised at Japan for coming out and saying that so early on in the talks that they weren't going to commit to a second period of Kyoto. And there seems to be some concern this might represent a new kind of hardline stance from the Japanese government. And we had Christian Aid say that this really has the potential to stall the talks and potentially put millions of lives at risk. So I think it's down to the EU and progressive countries now to back Kyoto, and I'm sure this is a story that will evolve throughout the week. If you watched our Copenhagen coverage a year ago, then you'll have known, as Zaina noted, that it was full of world leaders and international celebrities and people milling around prime ministers and presidents and all sorts. Cancun is very different, as you might be able to tell behind us. The atmosphere is a little bit more muted, and there aren't any world leaders here yet. Some might show up next week. I know that the UK Prime Minister was advised not to come. The Climate Minister told him that it was not a sensible use of his time. And President Lula of Brazil has actually expressed a lot of frustration about this. He says no big leader is going, only environmental ministers at best. We don't even know if foreign ministers are going, so there won't be any progress. And he himself decided not to travel to Mexico last week. Now, there are some rumours that one world leader who might turn up is Evo Morales, and if you followed our coverage of the People's Climate Summit in Bolivia earlier this year, then you'll know that he was behind that as kind of an alternative conference to try and bring the people of the world together. And there's been some people saying maybe he'll show up at the end of this conference to announce a second People's Climate Summit. So we'll keep our eye on that one and see whether that turns out to be true. And finally, another story that cropped up this morning was the extent to which 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees should be the limit of global warming. And as you know, this is something which has been a big issue throughout the talks. How much are we going to try and limit global warming? In Copenhagen, many countries said that they thought that it should be 2 degrees, although actually they didn't come out with the commitments that would be necessary to achieve that. However, for the small island states, that would essentially mean their extinction. They'd go underwater, and many vulnerable countries in Africa and other parts of the world wouldn't be able to produce food. So this really would represent a travesty, and for that reason, they've been very keen to keep keep on the table the option of limiting global warming to actually 1.5 degrees. Now, a piece of news we've had this week is that seems to have been kicked out of the talks, essentially, at least until June. As you might know, the small island states have incredibly small delegations here. They're not rich countries, and they often find it difficult to be in all of the rooms at once. And it seems that whilst they were out of the room, Saudi Arabia managed to postpone this issue until June. So it's a little bit of a worrying development, and I'm sure that campaigners have been mobilising around that throughout the week in order to try and make sure that this isn't something that drops off the agenda completely.
we'll be following all these up later as well as the conference progresses. You were talking about Japan, and one action that was planned by the groups that were here that came out in Eco magazine today was quite funny. I think we should read it out.
Go for it.
It's Cancun Personal. Annex 1 country seeking